I don't want to give you 1 second of comfort. And so in order to take away all comfort from you, I'm going to say this. Sometimes I hear men especially use this excuse. Well, all men struggle with sexual immorality. I want to take that away from you. That's not true. All men should fear sexual immorality. All men should constantly be aware of the dangers, but I want you to know, not every man struggles with this. You need to understand that and not use it as a comfort for your own sin. Now again, that's very hard, but it's very true. We all may struggle. We all struggle in certain areas, but don't think that because you struggle in a certain area, everyone else does. Because that's simply not true. And you don't want to give your flesh comfort in this. There is power over sexual immorality. There is power. Regardless of how dangerous this sin is. And if you don't think it's dangerous, then I would suggest you talk to 3 people. The pastor, the policeman, and the lawyer. Because they will tell you that a great many crimes and dangers and horrible things that occur in this world flows out of this. It does. This is not some harmless sin. This is not just a viewpoint that we ought to live in absolute moral freedom. This kills. It destroys more than any of us could ever know. And it doesn't just wreck the present generation. It wrecks generation after generation after generation. So now, having said that, I want to give us just a small background on the terms that we often use. For example, sexual immorality. From where does that word come? What does it actually mean? It comes from the Greek word porneia. Now I'm going to use a definition given by Lo and Nida, Greek scholars, and they say this: the word porneia means to engage in sexual immorality of any kind. Sexual immorality of any kind. So I want you to see, performing some unbiblical act with another person is no different than all the other expressions. That they are all wrapped up in wickedness. And you need to see that, so that you don't slide. Because in sexual immorality, what you need to understand is it starts off sometimes very, very small. Just a glance. But before we go on, let me say something. A great majority of novels that people read, even so-called people in the church read, would properly be qualified as pornography. So just because there's no pictures doesn't mean you're not in sin. Very important. Now, what I want to do now is I want to go through just several texts of the Bible and just make brief comments, because most of these texts stand on their own. And my hope is that the Holy Spirit will do what no man can do. And that is set upon your heart fear, great fear for these things. First of all, Acts 15, 19 through 20. It's talking about the Jerusalem Council and what's going on there. The Gentiles have been converted. Many of the Judaizers were going out and trying to turn them into Jews, put them back under the law, demanding circumcision. But then the apostles and the leaders and the elders meet together in Jerusalem and they make some decisions. Now, what is the decision? They condemn sexual immorality alongside of 2 other things: idolatry and the consuming of blood. Now, I want you to think about that for just a moment before we read the text. Because sometimes it's helpful to get a visual picture. These 3 things are set beside one another, so that you can say in some manner they are, at least to some degree, they are equal. Would you bow down before an idol of Baal? Well, you're committing an equal thing when you're involved in any form of sexual immorality? Would you consume blood as a pagan? Well, you're on par with these types of things when you are involved in sexual immorality. It says 15:19 through 20, "Therefore it is my judgment that we not trouble those who are turning to God from among the Gentiles, but that we write to them that they abstain from things contaminated by idols, and from fornication, and from what is strangled, and from blood." I've always marveled at how light the Jerusalem Council seems. Abstinence from sexual immorality is one of the most essential and basic aspects or requirements of the Christian life. Keeping yourself pure from sexual immorality is one of the most basic and essential things. If you have not mastered this, you have not even achieved, you have not even accomplished, you have not even arrived to the first rung of what it means to be a mature Christian. Now that sounds hard. I want to lay that before you because I am so sick and tired of hearing men across the nation whine about the power of this, when I know God has given us power over it. And thinking it's almost an acceptable thing that you can have this and still do Christianity. No, if you are doing this, you've not even made it to the first rung of Christianity. You're not even walking baby steps in Christianity, and I don't care how many books you've read, I don't care how much theology you know, and I don't care how much wisdom you think that you possess. You've touched nothing of maturity. This is extremely important to understand this. Or do you not know that your body is the temple of the Holy Spirit who is in you, whom you have from God, and that you are not your own? Let me illustrate this for you. You know that a priest, not properly prepared, entering into the Holy of Holies, that was a death sentence. You do know that, don't you? The most terrifying thing was once a year to go into the Holy of Holies, and everything had to be done exactly as the Lord desired. I mean, I'm not talking about you could get away with something in there. Everything had to be perfect. Now I want you to think for a moment about sexual immorality, the temple, your body, and the Holy Spirit. And this is the illustration that I want to leave in your mind. Imagine a Levitical priest practicing sexual immorality with a pagan prostitute in the Holy of Holies. Can you imagine? No, you can't. What would happen? That's unthinkable. It was unthinkable when at times idols were put in the Holy of Holies. Or to defile it, pig's blood was offered or whatever. But think about this. This is what a man is doing. This is what a believer is doing. What a flagrant, arrogant, shameless way of dealing with the presence of Christ that dwells within us. You see how horrifying this is? I don't think it's just when the act is committed. Remember what sexual immorality is. It embarks all these things. Everything we've mentioned. After hearing me preach for weeks, you may think that some sort of terror came upon me in the night. That's not the case. Talk about this. There's only one way to talk about it. Fiercely. And there's only one way to deal with it. Fiercely. You need to take it to heart. Young men, old men, young ladies, elderly ladies, all need to take it to heart. Be very careful. It takes all sorts of forms. And know this, what was called pornography even 30 years ago is not called pornography today. Be very careful. Those areas that appear to be gray. It's a great movie. It just had one act of immorality in it. What are you saying? And for you youngsters, I've got a word for you. You need to understand. And I'm not saying anything. If I did, I would say it, but I haven't seen it among you, but I have seen it in your generation, and it terrifies me. I see young men and women who go to seminary, go to Bible college, or who just seem to love the Lord, read all kinds of books, the good ones. They read MacArthur and Sproul and Piper and all sorts of men like that, talk about the Puritans, and then can switch right at that moment and talk about some film that in my generation a lost person wouldn't go watch. Be very careful. Because I can tell you this, you want to truly know the power of God? I'm not just talking about little stories. I'm not talking about just acting. You truly want to know the power of God? You have to make some serious decisions in your life. Legalism has nothing to do with legalism. I don't even think about law when I walk on this earth. You know what I think about? There is a person who dwells within me. And He's not referred to as a bull or a rhino or an elephant, although He is stronger, infinitely stronger than all of them. Person dwells in me. He's called the Holy Spirit. And He is referred to as a dove, easily offended, easily quenched. Be careful. This is not about keeping rules. This is about not offending the person who dwells within you and within the church.